All right. Well, we're going to get started. We may have more people jumping on as we go through this, but I want to welcome everybody and wish you all a happy Mother's Day. And thank you for joining us this morning. Hopefully, you also have an opportunity to catch worship that was posted online last night on Facebook or YouTube. So if you haven't caught that yet, please feel free to join in and see that sometime today or this week. You have a whole week to peruse the worship service. Um, but this morning we have a special program. We are joined by Dave Eberle from Lutheran Family and Children's Services. He is, I don't know, I forget his exact title, but basically he is a liaison between LFCS and all of the churches in the St. Louis area. And he has worked directly with us a couple times. He actually came earlier this year and spoke directly with the parents about anxiety and depression in youth. And it was a great turnout for that here. And so he is here to talk a little bit about what LFCS does, and so that you can have a better insight into all the plethora of services that they offer to the people of St. Louis area. So thank you.
Thank you, Chad. I appreciate the introduction, and thank you very much, everybody, for being here and joining us. Before I get started, I have to obligatorily say, not have to, Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms, grandmas, the aunts, the foster moms, the adoptive moms, everyone who plays a role in a child's life. I lost my mom to cancer in 2003, and she was a strong woman, and I miss her dearly. But I've been blessed to have multiple other strong women in my life who have cared, molded, loved, shared, nurtured me to help me to be the man that I am today. And I know that without their support and their love and their care, I would be a shell of the person that I am. So I understand and appreciate the role that women have in the caring for children and holding the families together, especially in times like this. So, every mom out there, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm going to share my screen for a moment, so bear with me here. And I would like to start by getting into our presentation about what we do. So, if you'll excuse me for just 1 second.
And as
There we go.
Dave is getting that ready, if you do have questions that come up during the presentation, please feel free to go up to the chat bubble on your screen and type in a question, and we will be sure to get those out to Dave so he can answer those while you're here. Thank you.
So, the goal of being here this morning is to talk about the ways that LFCS supports and cares for children and families in the St. Louis community, but also throughout the state. Um, my hope is not only to give you an overview of all the services that we provide, but I also want to show you how we're inspired by God's Word to care for those in need, and how we are called by our mission and our vision. For over 150 years, LFCS has cared for children, strengthened families, and helped build healthy communities, all by the grace of God. Now, throughout our history, we have adapted as the needs of our communities have changed. And today, it's all the more necessary as we face the uncertainty, worry, and hardship due to COVID-19. I want to talk about later on how we have made adaptations and how we've continued to support our staff, care for our clients, and be there for you if you need us. So I want to start by going over what our mission and our vision is, since it inspires all the services that we offer here. So our mission is simple yet profound, and that through Christ's love, we empower children and families to overcome challenges today so that they can build a better tomorrow. Our vision, that generations of children and families across Missouri are safer and stronger together. We hope to break cycles of abuse and neglect that are prevalent in many families. We want to educate young parents to provide the best care that they can for their child. We want to prevent at-risk children from making poor life choices, and we will continue to create countless forever families through our services. Now, transitioning into our services, they're broken up into 3 core programs. We will start with our Family Services Core Program, and these consist of foster care, adoption, pregnancy, and parenting services. Now, our foster care program operates out of St. Louis and Southwest Missouri currently. Here in St. Louis, there are currently 800 children in the foster care system. LFCS is responsible for the case management of about 400 of those kids. Now, in our Springfield office, we're primarily responsible for recruiting and training parents so that they're prepared for child placement when they're called upon through the state foster care system. In either place, our goal for every foster child that comes into our care is family reunification. But we're aware that that's not always the safest option. If it's not possible, then we work to place that child in a loving adoptive home. Now, we also understand that foster care is a very important area of service for LFCS. For those of you who aren't familiar, in foster care, a child is removed from their home for any kind of reason. Now, whatever it is, we know that those reasons involve some form of trauma on that child. Now, whether it's abuse, neglect, many of the stories can be severe and have a lasting mental and physical impact on that child. We're cognizant of that. And we know that every child who comes into our care has a long road ahead of them and has experienced multiple forms of trauma. And think about the trauma that they're facing. The trauma of being removed from their home and pulled away from their parents. The trauma they've experienced while living in that household and what they've seen or witnessed. And the trauma of being placed in a new home for an indefinite period of time. That's difficult for any kid to go through. They've got a lot on their plate. So our job is to give them everything that they need to adjust, to succeed, and feel like they can thrive in their environment. And this can look like several different things. We first make sure that they have the proper medical care that they need. We next make sure that they have access to mental health counseling to handle any issues they might be going with. We're in constant communication with their foster family, whether it's a respite care or a long-term placement, and put goals in place for what they're trying to achieve and where we're trying to get to. Now, we not only provide the mental health counseling for the children, but we also make sure that those foster parents have access to it as well. So more often than not, that trauma stems beyond the child, and it carries over into the entire home. And again, we want to make sure that everyone has all the tools that they need to recover and create a loving, caring environment for these children to grow up in. And we're proud of the foster parents that we recruit and train. Their love for their children is unlimited, and their willingness to love kids who have experienced trauma and have a difficult life, as a parent, it's awe-inspiring. I think back to one such example that was shared with me. It happened a few years ago, but the story itself resonated even now to this day. There was a 4-month-old little boy named Bentley who was brought into the care of LFCS. His birth parents shook and abused him to the point where he was left blind and needed a feeding tube. He was placed in the ICU. We were called and asked if there'd be anybody who could care for him. So through LFCS, Bentley was placed in the care of Patrice. She was a foster parent for more than 20 years who also had experience caring for children with special needs. She found therapies to address his delays, but she also spent countless hours caring for his every other need. Having issues with sight, she wanted to connect through Bentley the only way she knew how, and that was through song. So whenever she was with him in the hospital or working through different treatments, she'd always sing to try to calm and comfort him. And he made big strides. In 2 years, Bentley was able to sit up on his own, was able to learn to communicate, and could even smile when he was happy. And the thing that always made him smile was hearing Patrice's songs and connected through the music. And that story is a microcosm of what our foster care program is all about. There are so many kids in need, And we're constantly looking for short-term and respite foster care parents. But we know that not everyone's in that place. So the ones who feel they are ready, we want to support and care for them so that they can care for children properly. Now, transitioning to our next service, our adoptions are offered across the entire state. We are licensed for both domestic adoptions and Hague accredited for international adoptions. The program itself operates as a full circle of service. First, we work with birth parents when they're forced to make that choice of whether they don't believe they can care for their child or not. Before we go any further, I always want to pause to take a moment to reflect on that. For those of us who are parents here, take a second to think back to what it was like when you first brought your child home. Remember the constant crying, the sleep deprivation, worrying about new experiences. Think back about how stressful that was and how many fears and anxieties and worries you had. Now imagine trying to adapt to that lifestyle while living in an unsafe or unstable home. Maybe you didn't have a job that could pay or was constant, or you had no opportunity for childcare for your child. You had far more questions than you had answers. And so these are some of the things that our clients deal with. And we want to make sure that we're respecting their decisions. Now, we'll talk more about this when we get into the pregnancy services. But this is a part of adoption that can get lost. And we want to make sure that those mothers are supported by LFCS in a non-judgmental, informative way. Our position is merely to make sure the mother has all the information and resources she needs to make the best choice for her and her baby. Now, from the other side of the spectrum, we work with couples who find themselves unable to conceive naturally. Now, again, this hits close to home because my wife and I had trouble conceiving with our children. It took us several years and lots of frustration. So I can testify firsthand to the emotional devastation that occurs during this process. Having to face that continual rejection and disappointment, the uncertainty month after month, having to try new procedures, and the stress and strain it takes on a relationship. There's a lot of support needed for those couples who are looking to us for adoption, that want to make a family, even though they've been told for years that it might not be possible. LFCS provides all of the support for adoptive parents. We provide home studies, trainings. We make sure that they are working with a singular social worker who's in touch with them throughout the entire process, and communication is paramount. We know that we are constantly trying to make sure that parents understand where they're at, what updates are going on, and if they've been selected, what that process looks like moving forward. And all of this is with the goal of placing a loving child in a home that desperately wants nothing more than to be a family. Now, our pregnancy services are a very robust program. I alluded to them a little bit before about what we can do, but I want to go a little bit more in depth as to what they are. So with these, they can look like many different things for women. Sometimes it's helping to provide proper medical care for that pregnant mom to make sure that she has a safe and healthy birth for her child. Maybe it's assistance with handling rent or other financial or environmental challenges. Perhaps she needs another place to stay or needs help with getting a different apartment. Or it could be that she needs help finding a job or graduating from school or applying for college. LFCS situationally provides resources and help for any of those options, and it's different depending on the mom's situation. What we do is we provide a licensed clinical social worker for each mom. We counsel on life choices only, and we focus on the health of the mother and the child. Now, that mom, after that child is born, can make her decision by what's best for her, whether she decides to parent or place that child up for adoption. If that child ends up being placed up for adoption, she is in full control as to what it looks like. That mother selects the family. She decides whether it's open, partial open, or closed adoption. And she makes sure that she is comfortable and in care with the decision and receive counseling services after the fact. knowing how difficult that transition can be. Now, should that mom decide to parent her child, our parenting classes and home visitations are critical for educating parents and helping stopping negative trends in their household. Some of the things that our classes tackle are: what are normal developmental stages for a child? How do you react to the stress of a newborn constant crying? What are positive techniques that you can do for feeding, changing, playing, making sure that they're getting proper care and they're having proper social interactions? And what do you do when your patience is worn thin and all you know is the abuse and neglect that you've been raised in? And I say that last one because LFCS is very aware that a large percentage of our clients in our parenting services have been abused and neglected previously. And statistics show that if you've been abused and neglected, you are more likely to carry that on than not. And this is where the work of our classes are paramount, where they can break that cycle and start a new pattern of love and care. Now, our home visitations are where the social worker will go into their home. They'll make sure the environment is physically safe, but they'll also make sure that the parents or the caregivers for the children are also in a mentally stable and safe place as well. These social workers make the visits, they counsel, they stay through, they follow up after placement, or not placement, after the child is brought home, to make sure that, again, that house is a home and that child is loved and those parents feel prepared and supported throughout the process. We next transition to our second core programs, which is our behavioral health and community prevention. These include our outpatient counseling, our in-school counseling, and our community prevention services. Now, I'm sure that there are many reasons why people will seek out mental health treatment. Times are tough, and sometimes life becomes unmanageable, and we all need help. You can see listed on the screen are some of the most common reasons that people seek out professional help, as listed by a survey through our counselors and social workers. Anxiety, depression, marital issues, bullying, grief, loss, just to name a few that are listed. Whatever that reason, whatever is causing your daily functions to be interrupted and to feel like life is unmanageable, LFCS can try to help and is here for you if you need us. Our outpatient counseling is the biggest program that we offer throughout the state. This past year, it encompasses 49.8% of our state budget for all services. And we deal with the issues that cause stress and trauma in people's lives, and we help them cope so that they can work through those issues. We're finding out that our services are being utilized more and more by kids. And since LFCS is all about kids, we're proud to say that our counseling staff is trained to deal with the unique stressors that children experience today. And that's something that we can be very proud of, that we specialize in it. You can see on the screen that we offer counseling services for all aspects of your family life. Life happens. I mean, we've seen it this year. Life happens. Things change. So we want to make sure that we're able to provide services for individuals, couples, seniors, families, children, because they all experience life in different ways. We know how important mental health is, and we want our clients to have every resource available to their success. And this is also why every service that you will see listed today, we provide mental health counseling free of charge to any client who participates in any other service. Now next, we're going to transition to our school counseling. This is one of the most important services we offer, because here our counselors are embedded right where the kids need them in their schools. Excuse me. Previously this year, we had professional counselors and therapists in 60 different school districts throughout St. Louis City and County, and those are both public and private. We provide individual and group counselings to kids in school right there on site. Now, one of the reasons why this is so important is that youth and teen suicide has steadily been on the rise. A few quick stats for you. that since 1999, suicide has been the second leading cause of death in youth and teens, not just in Missouri, but in the United States. 1 in 8 Missouri middle school students would have seriously considered suicide this previous year. If you go to high school, that rate jumps to 1 in 6. So when we talk about our services being important, and we talk about how these counseling services are needed right where the kids are at, it's not an exaggeration to say that our services are a matter of life and death. If we can intervene with a child who's having a dark time and thinks suicide may be the only way out, we can be in part of saving a life. And our school counselors deal with everything from that serious level of threat to depression, to bullying, to having trouble with the family life, to different aspects that children deal with. We are so blessed that we can have our counselors in the school meeting the kids right where they are. Now, our community prevention services primarily exist in St. Louis City, but there's a few that are scattered around St. Louis County as well. And these programs are meant for kids who are considered at risk. And so at risk is a term where we mean that they live in poverty or they live in traditionally violent neighborhoods or come from a single parent household. The goal for these services is to provide these kids with life skills such as character development, anti-drug, anti-violence, anti-gang, but also things like personal finance, being able to know how to do your taxes, to apply for a job, to open a bank account. And we also stress the importance of education, not just for getting good grades, but for opportunities that can arise from being educated and informed. And this brings to another example that I wanted to share with you this morning of a gentleman who actually worked for us previously. Now, this young man, he started out in our community prevention program when he was a kid. He grew up in a housing project where gang and violence was the norm. It's all that he saw. He came into our program. He developed a strong relationship with one of the mentors that he developed there. And he credits this relationship to saving his life and getting him out of a cycle that he didn't think he'd ever get out of. He graduated from high school, went to college, graduated from college, and came to work at LFCS as a kids mentor in the very same program he grew up in. He often says when he reflects back on his time in the program that before his mentor, he never knew that there was anything outside of the West Florissant bus line. And his mentor opened his eyes to a world of different experiences. And when you create options and opportunities for children that have never known that it's there, the ceiling is, there is no ceiling. It's limitless. But they just need to know that those are there and that they can feel supported and cared and know that making the right choice is worth it. It's truly one of my favorite success stories, and I love telling it, so I apologize if it was a little too lengthy. So, as I mentioned earlier, LFCS has adapted throughout the years to the changes of the community. This is probably one of the biggest challenges we've had to face in a very long time. And I'm very proud to talk about how we have transitioned and how we've worked through this and how we're going to end up continuing moving forward. So I'm also proud to say that every service that you have heard so far has not had one lapse of being able to provide services for our clients. So our foster care program has been using video meetings, and they do have the option for meeting up in person, but only in emergency situations. Our social workers are still being able to work with them on their situations. They're still able to provide telehealth counseling services if they need to. And if supplies or different needs are being faced, we're working with them as well. The adoption, pregnancy, and parenting services have all transitioned to Google Hangouts, Skype, or Zoom meetings. We've been able to provide the diapers, wipes, formula requests, needs for moms in our pregnancy and parenting services who may need help, though. We've been working in a safe fashion to transfer those as well. And all of our behavioral health programs have implemented telehealth video meetings. And they've been able to do it with security, with confidentiality in mind, and are working to try to find new ways to interact people who are struggling with the technological advance. I say all this because we know that this pandemic does not pause the struggles of those who need us. So we will continue to work to provide innovative measures so that we can help those who desperately need our services. Now, along this end, we also understand that everyone's struggling now in one way or another. And we want you to know that we're here for you if you need us. As leaders in the field of professional mental health, we understand that times of crisis are stressful and often traumatic for individuals, children, couples, and families. When unmanaged, the effects of that stress and trauma can cause severe mental, physical, emotional, and social damage to our well-being. If you need us, we understand. Our counselors are ready to address the challenges that you and your family may feel during this time of uncertainty. Again, telehealth is a new service, but it's something that allows us to connect to as many people as we can. And we want you to know that if you need us, please call us. Our phone number, as you can see on the screen, is 866-326-LFCS. We will do our best to make sure that you are comfortable and that we can accommodate you and your family's needs as we all move forward together through this pandemic. Our final core program is actually a single facility. And here in St. Louis, we have a childhood and development center called Hilltop. It's a center for kids 0 to 5 years old, but it's much more than just a daycare. It's a learning institution and really so much more. So what we do at Hilltop is we prepare children for kindergarten readiness, but we also provide wraparound services to their family as well. So for example, if their parent is in need of a social worker, in need of case management, needs help with a mental health counseling issue, they can get all of those services at that Hilltop Child Care Center. Those kids are being prepared for kindergarten readiness. So they're experiencing a high quality education, making sure that they're prepared to move on to kindergarten. The goal for Hilltop as a whole is to provide a safe environment so that parents can get resources, children can grow and learn, and that we can build a healthy environment at home, not just at school. We're trying to make a bigger impact in the North St. Louis community area with Hilltop. And this doesn't stop when the kids leave the building and graduate. Once they go to kindergarten, our staff continues to track their success and progress educationally. We track them through third grade. And the biggest thing we look for is we test their reading levels to see where they're at. Because we know that the predominant indicator for future success is a child's reading level by the third grade. And then the other benefit we have is that while we're tracking these children, the parents can continue any services they have or explore new ones during this time so that we can keep providing the help and service that they need to continue success and to build a pattern of love, care, and connection. So those are the services that we provide. And that's a lot. It's a lot of different aspects that we help lives here in St. Louis. But it's certainly not the end of our influence. Being founded by Reverend Johann Binger, Lutheran faith is embedded in our agency. It's embedded in everything that we do. And it's a credit to God's love that we're able to provide these services. And all because we were inspired by the love and care that God has shown us. So I want to take some time to talk about our biblical inspiration. I feel it's important because it shows you how we are influenced to do the work that we're doing, how our staff approaches dealing with difficult situations on a day-to-day basis, and how our clients can get through trauma and tragedy with security and faith. And so I'm going to use a couple examples of stories, scripture, and talk about how they connect to our staff and to our clients. Our first story is the story of Queen Esther. And so for those of you familiar with that story, know that Esther is renowned for her beauty and had an unlikely rise to power and royalty when the Jewish people were in Persia. Now, her influence would be necessary during that time. The villain Haman of the story was the king's chief minister, and he despised the Jewish people. He wanted them to be eradicated, every one of them. And Queen Esther risked her life to intervene. She approached King Xerxes, knowing that Haman was able to hear about it and witness it and had spies throughout his kingdom, pleaded for the life of the Jewish people, asked that they be spared. She then told the king about what Haman was planning to do behind the king's back, again, risking her life. The king intervened, Haman was sentenced to death, and the Jewish people were allowed to live freely and peacefully, sorry, not freely, excuse me, peacefully throughout their time in Persia. Now you might ask, why is this important to LFCS? A good question. What tends to get lost in Esther's story is that Queen Esther was adopted. Mordecai, her cousin, took her in and raised her as his own child. Mordecai made a choice, an act of selfless love to care for his cousin, and did the best that he could. And years later, Esther made another choice, also out of selfless love, to risk her life to warn the king of Haman's scheme. In this story, love inspires love. And that's what we look to do with our services. We look to stop those patterns of hate, of anger, of violence, intervene and show love so that we can create a new pattern. Just as Esther did in her life, we pray that our services can intervene and change the trajectory of people's lives who are just as unfortunate of a start as Esther's was. The next story we focus on is the story of Hannah. Now, many of you know her as Samuel's mom, but in the story, Hannah wanted nothing more than to be pregnant. Her husband loved her dearly, but year after year they were unable to conceive. And every year during the annual sacrifice, Hannah would be tormented by her rival, which was her sister wife at the time. Her sister wife would mock her inability to bear children and would talk about her kids and ridicule Hannah in front of everybody in the synagogue when they were worshiping on a year-to-year basis. Essentially a public shaming, really. Now, in spite of all of this, Hannah never lost faith in God, nor was she angry at God for allowing this to happen. She prayed. She was fervent in her prayer, so much so that she was noticed by the priest Levi, who gave her his blessing after hearing her story. Shortly after Levi blessed her, Hannah became pregnant with Samuel, who would continue to grow to great prominence throughout the Old Testament. So I'm sure you can see why Hannah is such an inspiration to us. Her character in the face of adversity is worth uplifting. The virtues that you see listed here are seen in so many of the clients that we serve. The faithfulness that Hannah puts in God can be seen in the foster family caring for their traumatized child. Hannah's prayer to be a mother can be heard daily by the adoptive mom waiting for their placement. Courage in the face of adversity and ridicule ties Hannah's struggles to that of many of our clients in multiple programs. We know that not every prayer will be answered. We know that God doesn't work on our time. We know that life doesn't always make sense. What we can see from Hannah, as well as our other clients, is that overcoming adversity takes faith, courage, and patience. Strength will rise as we wait upon the Lord. Now, the wisdom and the writings of David and Solomon have provided many inspirational verses. They seem to touch every aspect of our life. We read the songs and sayings from these two books, and we notice how relevant they are to our work. I've gathered a sampling of different verses, and they'll display on the screen slowly. I ask that you read them over and just reflect on how they fit about the services I've talked about previously, and maybe how they are interacting in your life today. Now, finally, there is no greater influence that we have than that of Jesus Christ. He is in everything we do and alive in our hearts today. At LFCS, we were founded on Jesus' words and work to be stewards of Christ's love to all that we serve. I'm going to share a few verses with you and talk about how they fit to what we do. First, this is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Every service we provide is rooted in love for others. We only love others because Christ loved us first. Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. Jesus loves children. He says we cannot enter his kingdom unless we become like little children. LFCS is all about kids, as we mentioned earlier. We work to help kids feel loved and safe in every service that we provide. Let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who's in heaven. I mean, look around. The world needs a little bit more light nowadays. The staff of LFCS works hard to provide a spark of light where darkness can thrive. With the help of congregations like Living Lord, we can continue to illuminate St. Louis and the state of Missouri. And then finally, you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and your fruit should abide in me. We all bear fruit in different ways. Everyone has a unique gift, and it's when we work together under the guidance of our Lord and Savior that we're truly able to ripen the lives of those around us and those we care for. So all of these programs not only impact the individual lives of the children and families we serve, but we talked about earlier, it's a lot like the pebble in the lake theory. When you throw a rock in the water, you see the ripples and you see it grow and make a larger effect and larger and larger. We see the same thing when the life of a child is changed, which then in turn strengthens their family, which can then inspire and give hope to a community and give the idea that maybe change can happen for society at large. It's lofty, but that's what we're all about. And we would love to have you help us fulfill our mission if you are able. And there are many different ways that you can. And I'll share several here. And we know that times are tough and we know there's different things that are restriction, but here are ways that you can help our mission. First and foremost, pray for our ministry and who we serve. Pray for children and families who are struggling. Pray for our staff to make a difference in the lives of those we care for. Ask that God would work his will into the services that we provide. Talk to your neighbors about our services. Now that you know what we do, if you see someone who could help, please pass along our number, which again is 866-326-LFCS. Let people know that we're here and we're working to help build a safer and stronger community. Volunteers for special events. Now, I know that we're going to be restricted moving forward. We're not sure how these are going to happen because they're changing by the day. But if you have opportunities to help, we traditionally have 2 annual events where we require volunteers, and we'd love to have you help and join us. Now, I talked about a little bit earlier, but consider being a foster parent or adoption through LFCS if you feel that God is calling you in that way. I know right now we are in need of both. We're in need of respite or short-term foster care parents desperately, and also parents who would be willing to do adoption. Normally we have about 30 or so that are waiting for a placement, and right now we're down to about 13. So this is not for everybody. But if you do feel it's your calling, or if you know someone who's been exploring these options, please pass along our information. We'd love to hear from them and explore to see if it's a right fit. And then finally, your charitable giving dollars go a long way to the help of our services. We're faithful stewards of any donations, and we're grateful for any help that can be provided. And I know Living Lord has supported us annually and continually, and we are beyond grateful for that help and care. Thank you. And with that, I am grateful to have your time and attention today. It's the end of my presentation. So with this, I will turn over to Chad and see what questions have come to mind that I can possibly help answer. And thank you guys very much for your time today.
Thank you, Dave. And we do have a few questions that did come up, so let me put those out there real quick. How many congregations do you work with in the area?
So I am currently working predominantly in the St. Louis area, but I also have some time in Cape Girardeau as well. In St. Louis, I have been in contact with roughly 112 congregations. And then in Cape so far, I think we've been in contact with 30. Now, regular contact of back and forth dynamics, you're probably maybe more like the 60 or 70 range in St. Louis and probably 7 or 8 in Cape.
Okay, so you run all the way out to Cape, because that was one of the other questions: is the furthest
But
distance that you go.
before the world ended, yes. Yeah.
Okay. What are the age ranges of children you work with for foster care or adoption?
Um, Both of those, they go from birth, if need be, all the way up and through I think the state requires in 18, they start to transition, 21's full independence. So we run the full gamut. Well, the demographics change as time goes on by who's placed where. Um, Predominantly, I'd say you're going to get a lot more of those toddler through middle school as the bulk of the people you're going to have.
Okay. Let's see. And have you at LFCS noticed an increase in counseling services requested during this pandemic?
So, yes. And the biggest thing with that is also because we've opened up telehealth as an option, we're not limited to where our home offices are. So areas that haven't had office placed yet, we can now give them telehealth services for counseling. So it kind of broadens our range and creates a lot more reach for our mental health services. Now, that being said, um, right now we're still able to take on new clients. We're still able to provide services. I don't know the exact scheduling, but most of the time it happens a fairly quick turnaround of maybe a week or two from making the call to getting an appointment. That's a rough estimation, so please don't hold me too hard to the coals to that one.
Let's see. Um, we are going to say, what and when are your two events for volunteers? Is there an age limit for volunteering?
Okay, so this is again, it's in flux. Normally we have a spring and a fall event. There is no age limit for volunteering. Traditionally, it has been a spring event that would be a golf outing or I think they're going to do something with the Kentucky Derby and Top Golf this year until it got shut down. And then traditionally in the fall, we have a auction at one of the like Four Seasons downtown or Sheridan or something like that that has silent auction and requires people to help with entrance ticketing, running things on those ends. So there is standing and walking being involved. If that would be the only thing, but anyone who wants to help, we can find something that we'd like to. No age limit, no restriction. The auction is normally a dressed up black tie type affair, so it would be a formal setting.
That is the questions we've had so far. If anything else, just throw it up there. But again, I want to thank Dave for his time to talk with you all and share a little bit of the mission with LFCS. And um, I know we've used it in our family a number of times and had just a wonderful experience and growth come from those times that we've used the services at LFCS. So I do appreciate you from a personal level. And we've had some comments about some other people who've also had. We're just thankful for what they've been able to receive, the blessings from LFCS. So thank you very much for all that you guys do over there and everything that you're providing for the community at large.
Well, you're very welcome, and I will. Let me see if I can put a message here. I'm going to put my email and the LFCS number so that if you do have a follow-up question or would like some follow-up information, please contact me. Let me know. I will try to get you to where you need to get to and make sure that someone can get back to you. And bear with me here.
And if anybody else has questions, we can always, contact the church office, and we'll be happy to get you in contact with the folks over at LFCS. So, thank you. Yeah, Pastor Lenny, do you have anything?
Uh-oh. You're muted.
Sorry, is this better?
There you go.
Okay. No, just to say thank you to Dave. In my short time here, I've seen that in many, many ways you've been a wonderful partner for Living Lord, and you're doing things then that help expand our ministry. And thank you, Chad, for hosting this morning and moderating this here. I know how much you care for our work with youth and children, and I'm excited to see the partnership that you have with Dave.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Chad.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us this morning, and we will have some information going out soon about upcoming changes to what we're doing here at the church as we begin to slowly phase into reopening and all those things that will be happening as a result of that. So please pay attention to emails and the newsletter that's being mailed out. And if you do have questions, feel free to contact the office or any of the staff.
Happy Mother's Day, everybody.